Hello again, and it's time for a new project in a new year 2025. Hope you guys have had a great Christmas, and let's just hope we all have a fantastic new year ahead. So this is my first project to video. I've done a couple more projects, even though we are in the 17th of January today. I've already done a couple of projects, but I don't always make videos for them. They're on my little Facebook page, Shed Crafts with Shane. Right, so today we're going to do this Spider-Man coming out of the web there. We're going to use the router to remove all the red sections, and then we're going to use the scroll saw to cut out the actual web itself. Now, I've had a couple of options on this one. Originally, I was thinking about doing the web in a 5.5mm plywood, then cutting out the head and hand there separately and attaching it to the web at the back. So basically using that as a backer, and we'll sit the face on top just so it stands up slightly. Then I thought it's quite a web effect, and this will be sent away in the post to somebody, to a friend of mine, so I need a little bit thicker. So I've gone for the 12mm plywood, and eventually we'll route all this out, cut out the web side of things on the spiral as I've just said, and then we'll use a router and maybe try and lower this web down just a little bit, just so he's just to say coming out of the web, and that way it should be a little bit more solid. I did have the option of going down to 3mm plywood. If this was stopping there, you might got away with it, but it's just going to be a little bit, maybe a little bit too delicate, you never know. So 5 and 3, that could have been an option, making the web out of 5, cutting out the face out of 3 and sticking that on. That's just not thick enough for me, so we're going to go for chunky old 12mm plywood, and we'll route it out, cut it out, and see how we get on with that. Okay, so as always, we've stuck our template down. I use a site called Rasterbator for enlarging. This was done on 6 A4 papers to start off with, and you just print it out, do it all by my phone, send it to the app Rasterbator, and download it to my phone, and from my phone across to the printer, prints it out with little markers. You line it all up, bit of sellotape here, there. That's your template ready to go. Now for me on this one, I've used good old carbon paper, nice fresh piece of carbon paper. This one's no good to anybody now. I think this has appeared in all my videos. And let's just pop that up there and use a pen. I just prefer to use a pen. It just stands out a little bit better. You can use pens if you want to, and let's just draw around it all. With it being so cold here in the UK, these have all been set up indoors, so nice and warm inside, at the table, nice cup of tea, and if we just take our time and draw all the way around that way. And then remember, you can use that again and again and again should you want to. So we've got our template there already on. I'll just put that to one side, remove our carbon paper, and there's our image all nicely done, and that's come out really nice. Some people prefer to stick the paper down, glue it down, route over the top. If it was a scroll saw project, I would have glued it down on top of painter's tape and cut it out as so. But we are going to route out all the shaded areas, and we're going to cut out all the areas with the crosses on. So there's our template all nicely ready to do. For routing out purposes, as always for me, I like to use these, what they call CNC bits. I think they're CPP, some computerized programming, digital bits or something, I don't know, something fancy. And like I say, Christmas has been and gone, and little Father Christmas has been generous to me and brought me up some nice new bits to get us going. These are a pack of 4 different ones. There's 10 degree, 15, 20s and 30s, and that is literally just the angle of the cut. So we'll get a 15 one out. They've come in different colours now for some reason. They all used to be blue. So there's our 15 degree cut there, just that angle on the end, you can just see that. Now they do have a small shaft on them, a 3.175mm, so to fit a 1/4 inch router shank or 6.35, you need what they call an adapter collet, and that is simply just a little tube like that with some splits in. You will slot that into there. That's now got a 1/4 inch shaft on it, and that will fit your 1/4 inch router. If your router takes 1/2 inch shanks, you also need a bigger adapter. So we will pop that in the router, do all our line work. Remember, up to the line on the inset there, all the way around all these shaded out areas, just to give us a nice smooth cut. And then we will come in with the end milling bits. I use these on all my projects, 90% anyway, and I've got no issues with these. And these will clear out the remainder of the shaded out area. Back in the older ones, those that have seen my previous videos, they used to come with these coloured caps on for some reason, and you would push that into your adapter collet just the same as your CNC bit. If I can just get that out quickly. And I used to just push mine in up to that coloured section there, like so. But now with these new ones, they don't seem to have the coloured section on, but it's just exactly the same bit, and that will just slot in there just the same, like so. And that will clear out these no problem whatsoever. Right, so that's our little CNC bits and the end milling bits sorted. So we can pop this to one side for now. We won't need those until we come to do the clear out. So we'll pop our 15-degree one in on this one. The reason why I'm not too bothered about the degree, we want it quite nice sides, because once we've routed all this out, we're going to inlay it all with red resin through the whole piece, and then the white of the eyes we will do white resin there with a white acrylic paint mixed with the resin. So for now we'll pop this in the router. Once we've popped it in the adapter collet, and if we start routing out all the shaded areas, give it a little general tidy up, and then we'll move on to the scroll saw side of things. We'll talk about that nearer the time, but for now let's start routing this one out. Right, so we've got our template down ready to route out, and you can see from that we've got the CNC bit in our old Black & Decker DN66 router. You've got the adapter collet there, and we've got the router bit in itself, 15-degree. Now I tend to work on roughly about 3mm depth wise, and that's literally the same thickness or the depth of one of your CNC bits, if you can get that. So that's plenty deep enough. You can go deeper obviously, but then you're just going to waste more resin. And if you go too deep, you're going to put a lot of strain on your machine and the bits themselves. Anything deeper than 6+ wise, you may have to do a couple of passes. So 3mm for me. I made that little gauge there. You can obviously purchase proper gauges, eBay, Amazon, and all the rest of the places. Right, so we're going to go all around these shaded areas, up to the line. Never route out on the line, because you've got something that's quite small, a small gap like that. If you go on the line there, down by 3mm, and on that line there by 3, you're going to narrow that section in between. So inset, always up to the line. If we're doing the outset pieces, up to the line there. So when you're basically done, you might just be able to see some of the pencil lines. Okay, we're all set up. Let's start routing the line work on this one, and then we'll pop on our end milling bit. Right, so we've gone all the way round with the CNC bit there in our little adapter collet. That cut through that like butter, really nice and smooth, and you will get a lot more projects out of those bits. And if you just see closely up, if I can just do it without knocking anything over, let's just turn it round a bit. So we've gone round all those sections, and as you can just about make out, we can just see our pencil line still. So remember, we've gone up to the line. So that's all nicely done. On a few of these smaller sections, I like to remove that with the CNC bit, and that will make a nice little depth gauge for when we come in with our end mill bits, which we're going to pop on now for the actual clear out. First time I've used these without the little barriers, and I'm going to go for the biggest one there is, because there's nothing too complicated. It's going to fit into all these smaller ones. Remember, we've removed the little ones already, so we just got to remove all these bigger sections. So the biggest one there is, and it's a simple case of removing the CNC bit, popping in the end milling bit, just something like that. We'll set it to the same depth by popping it in the router, and we can lay it on top of there to that depth, and if you just go and remove all the rest of these shaded areas. Right, so there's all our clear out done. Just nicely steady away. The good thing about those end milling bits, apart from basically routing out the side, they do route out this bottom section, so that's all nice and smooth. The downside with plywood, you can find these voids in between. Remember, plywood's made up of different layers. I believe there's 7 in this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers in this one. And unfortunately, you can find dodgy bits like this, as we call it. Sometimes you get lucky and you might find a nice, good section like so. That's not going to affect us today. I'm going to inlay this all with resin. But if you were painting it or whatever, bear that in mind, that you're going to get these faults underneath. And I've had them worse than that, where they've actually been holes underneath. But a bit of filler, resin over the top, and we're good to go. So that's all done out now. What I did notice when I was going around with the end milling bit, I'd actually missed 3 sections here that I hadn't cut out with the CNC bit. So a quick swap over, went around these 3 sections, back on with the end milling bit, and we cleaned it all out. So that's our router bit done now. That's all finished with. We will go around with a little Dremel eventually, something like this, with a little engraving bit on, and just give it all a nice tidy up at the end. But just before that, we're going to cut out these areas here with the little crosses on, with the scroll saw and a spiral blade. We'll do that next. Right, so we're going to cut it out, all these sections here, to give the nice webbing effect. Obviously you could leave that as it is and continue routing out, and basically just put a frame around this, so you've routed out the inner sections and then painted whatever cover you want. But for me, we're going to cut them out, so when it sits on a wall, you'll get the full webbing effect. Now I prefer what they call spiral blades. The good thing about spiral blades, and they're ideal for big projects like this, the teeth, if you just see them there we go, they are spiraled the full length of the piece. So you could start here, and if you just move your wood left, right, and it will cut it like so. Now the other two blades is the pin blade. They have a pin at both ends, and they just cut in one direction. So you would have to set up on your saw, feed your wood in, and then turn it completely to feed it that way, and then turn it again, and a lot of twisting and turning. And with a big project like this, you wouldn't even be able to turn this on my saw. I think my neck is what they call 16 inches. That's from the back of the saw up to where the blade is. So I don't think I would even be able to spin it on this one. And the more professionals, they use pinless blade. Right, now a little small things then. I've tried these, they just didn't quite work out for me. But like anything, the more practice you do, the easier it is. So for me, spiral blades. Unfortunately, my little drapper saw, if I can just turn my phone up a little minute, just to show you, that's my old saw in the corner there, look. Something that come off Noah's Ark. But it was really cheap to purchase, and it's still going 5, 6 years, 7 years later. But unfortunately, it only takes pin blades. So I have to use these adapter clamps on the end of my spiral blades. Spiral blades are not pinned. So one of those at the top, one at the bottom, and that clips on where the pins of your standard pin blade would fit. So just bear that in mind. If you want to go out and purchase a saw, pay the extra pennies and purchase one that takes pinless blades. So for me, we'll pop this on Pegasus number 5 spiral blade. First of all, we'll drill all these pilot holes, because obviously we've got to feed that blade into there to cut out that section. Then we'll remove it, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and hopefully it'll all nicely take shape. Once that's all been cut out, all this section will be removed. Obviously it won't look as big as, and then we'll look about maybe routing down the web a little bit, just so this outer line stands up maybe by a couple of millimeters. Nice clean up, and then we'll get onto the staining and resin side of things. But for now, let's drill our pilot holes and then pop the spiral blade in and cut it out. Right, you can see from that we fed our blade through one of the holes. On any scroll saw project, and it's a personal thing, the smaller the details in the middle, I always try and cut out the middle sections and then work out to the side. With something as chunky as this on the 12mm, I might be tempted to cut out all the surrounding area first, just to make it a little bit smaller. But with spiral blades, like I say, there's not a lot of turning and twisting. So we can literally start here, and we'll just feed that wood to the left, down, across, and like so, like that. And that will basically hopefully cut that out just up to the line. And then we'll take it out, pop it into the next one, and so on and so on. So we've got the blade in, we've took the tension up, we've got a ping ping. Ping ping sounds like so. We'll just get that side bit off. There we go. And with all your blades, be them spiral or straight standard blade, they want to feel smooth on the way down, rough on the way up. And that way you know you've got your blade in the right way. We'll do one at proper speed, and then we'll speed things up, because it's just basically the same thing. Okay, let's start cutting this one out. Right, so we've cut out the surrounding framework. As you can see from that was probably about the hardest section to do, to be honest, just because of the size of it and it catching on back bits and stuff. But we managed it, and there you can see from that will be the shape of our final project once it's finished. Now, as I said previously, I want to lower the web just by a couple of millimeters. Now, it just seems a lot of effort and work maybe for what it's going to achieve, but I've gone around with a pencil, and we basically want to lower all this just slightly, just so the face itself and the hand just stand up by a couple of millimeters. This is 12 millimeters, remember, so I think if we go down maybe to that second layer, as we call it, there's 7 on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. If you take the first 2 layers off, that might just lower it down a little bit. There's no need for it. You could leave it just like that quite happily, and there's that more or less finished for your scroll saw and whatever you. But I'm just going to see for my own personal benefit if it's going to achieve anything just by lowering that down. And I'm just going to simply get the router again and skim over the top with an end milling bit, and we'll see what it looks like. Right, so we've lowered the web by literally 3 millimeters. I've got one of my little CNC bits, and they come in at 3.175 millimeter shank on. And if we pop it to one side of one of these lower edges, it's literally flush with the top of the face here. So we'll call that 3 millimeter depth for that one. Pop that over there. Now, I did start off basically just routing it out as it was. But of course, when you get towards the end of the web there, the router didn't have a lot to balance on. So I literally just put the framework back on, and then when you come in with your router, you just have a better area to move about, and you can come in like so. It's better than actually trying to balance on one of the web pieces, if that makes sense. And that's it, it's all done. Was it worth the effort? I don't know. But you can more or less see, once we get it tidied up, you just see inside there, we've come down by 3 millimeters around the full piece, and for me personally, I think it just stands out a little bit better. Right, we'll clear all this off the table here. We get a sanding drum on the Dremel. We'll get our little engraving bit with a nice flat bottom piece on there. Let's just tidy it all up, bit of sandpaper, and then we'll round all these edges off. So when we come back, this will all be complete and ready for our staining, painting and resin. Right, there's all our sanding and tidying up with the Dremel, mouse sander, sanding drum on the Dremel, and a bit of sandpaper at the end. And that's basically just to round off the webbing effect there. And we've come down on these edges slightly, as you can see. And hopefully we've removed most of those little noisy bits on the back. So that's it. Our project is finished regarding the router and scroll saw side of things. Now it's a simple case of painting this, and then we'll fill it in with resin, and this project would be more or less finished. Now I've looked at different images of Spider-Man, and back in the olden days, as we say, this was all black, obviously with the red and some nice big white eyes. Then in the later films, this was all more or less silver on the images I've seen, and still the red and the whitey silvery eyes. And on the latest one, I do believe all this webbing effect is actually blue with the red, white, silver, whatever in between. And also we've got the web to see too. Originally I was going to stain this, just a light stain, teak, dark teak, and fill it in. But I'm going to go with some paint and basically just Painter's Touch black. We will do the full face with that and the hand itself. Just paint the full lot, even inside here. That just helps with the resin. If your colours aren't as thick as they should be colour-wise, because you've got a nice thick dark black background, they'll be a lot solider. Plus, it'll seal this wood, plywood, so you won't get so many bubbles popping about. And I'm going to really take my time and make work for myself here and basically paint the webbing white, if not with just a little touch of grey, like proper webbing stuff around the full piece. So black for your face and hands, and good old white for the webbing, and we'll tap a bit of black in there just to grey it up. Maybe we'll see when we come back. So I'll go indoors now and we'll start painting this one. When we come back, we will spray a bit of varnish on still, even though this is gloss paint. That varnish will just help seal it all, and then hopefully we'll get towards the resin side and we're heading towards the finishing line. But first of all, let's go and paint this. Right, so we've got all our painting done. The hardest part with this is white. You've always got to go 2 or 3 coats. I just went twice on that, and obviously we had all these side walls to paint. They could have done with another coat, but this is just a little free gift for somebody, so we don't have to go too crazy. And the black went on no problem, and the same with that, doing all the side walls on the black. You could have sprayed primer on first, that would have given you a better finish, and obviously you could have masked all that off and sprayed it just as easy. I just prefer to use paintbrush and good old Painter's Touch paint. Now you've got a little shine there, look, and you can actually leave it like that and basically just fill it in with resin, and this little project will be finished. When we put our resin in, we're not going to go right to the top. I like to go just slightly off the bottom, top should I say. When resin dries, you get a slight concave effect, and that's just enough so you can still feel that it's been routed out. So before that, I just want to spray on some varnish. You know it's coming. 151 clear lacquer today. It could be yacht varnish or anything. More so on the black section. 1, I do like that extra shine on my projects, as you know. And 2, it will just help seal this inside this routed out area, even though it's probably sealed with the paint. And that'll just help reduce those little bubbles. There'll be no bleeding on this one because obviously we're not going to the top and it's already been painted. So the main middle section will be to varnish, and it doesn't matter if it goes on the white as well. So 2 or 3 coats of simply just covering it like so. Right, that's all nicely dry now, and you can just see there's a better shine than there was before. And like I say, hopefully we've sealed this just to stop a few of those little bubbles popping through. Now remember, with your resins, you want proper gloves on, proper resin mask, and plenty of ventilation. Please don't follow me by example. Now the resin today is going to be Vista 1. Resin's a 2-part. You get A, your resin, and B, your hardener, and you basically just mix the same amount together. Now this is what they call a 1-to-1, so same of each, A and B. Some resins are 2-to-1, 3-to-1, so you might have twice as much A to half the amount of B, and so on. So just check your resins, but a 1-to-1 mix, you won't go far wrong, and it's a mix by volume. Some resins you will mix by weight, so you might need scales. This is by volume, and I tend to use these little plastic party cups, beakers. They've got little grooves on the side, so I'll count up 4, 5, 6, 7 grooves, then I mark them off A and B like so. So we've gone up 6 today of A, and obviously 6 grooves of B, and it will be a simpler case of pouring B into the mark to A, and then mixing the 2 together. They do recommend you put a 3rd beaker and transfer both. I personally just put B into A, and I've never had any issues with that. For colouring wise, just acrylic paints, red, basically the whole thing's going to be red apart from whites for the eyes, and we'll just make our little mixes up, and then we'll just squeeze a little bit in there, give it a nice mixing round. For mixing purposes, I use these plastic knife and forks. They're really cheap, And they're ideal because they do have a nice little groove in the back of them. You can do your mixing, scoop out what bit you need, and you just trickle it in like so. If that's not for your cup of tea, as we say, you can use syringes. I tried it once, it didn't work for me, but you basically can suck up your resin and squeeze it in that way. And another option is these little pipettes. You can cut the end off. It is possible to suck up your resin and you could fill it in that way. I've tried that one, just a little bit too slow for me. So personally, back of the knife, fork or spoon, and you go that way. Once it's dropped our bit of resin in, we'll help it on its way with a cocktail stick. Just feed it round, fill all our spaces in. Remember, we're not going to the top, just slightly below, and as it cures, it will get a slight concave effect. And once all the resin's in, we will skim over with a little lighter of some description over the top like that. Once the resin in, and that helps all those little bubbles come to the top. Or if you wanted to, you can bring out the big guns and do it that way. Okay, and then once that's all filled in, we will leave it a good 24 hours, get a nice cover for it, come back, and remember, because we've already put our varnish on, there's nothing else to do with this project, and this project will be finished. Okay, let's mix our two parts A and B together, and then we'll drop in some colour, and then we can start filling this one in. We'll start off slowly and then speed things up. Okay, so we've mixed our first batch of resin. That's all ready to go. I'd rather mix small amounts than mix a big beaker full. Probably have too much left over. And if you mix too much in one go, you can have what they would call a flash cure effect, where the resin can basically go off on you while you're stirring it. But we'll have a good 20 minutes, half an hour to play with this one. So we'll pop that on there. I'm just debating where to put that. And our red, that should be over fine. We'll just take the top of that one. That's a bit messy. Now they do say 10% of colour to the amount of resin you're mixing. I personally just add in to what I think I need. So we can pop a bit in like so. Give it a good mix round. And then we can drop a bit into our project. And if it looks okay, we can go ahead. If it doesn't look dark enough, I just simply pop a bit more in. Now I wouldn't go over the top and put half a tube of acrylic paint in there. That wouldn't be recommended. You can more or less see that nice red from there now. So we'll pop a little bit in just to show you, and then we'll speed things up, and then we'll be heading towards the finishing line. I'll pop a bit in just to see what I think. Remember, I just prefer to use the end of my spoon like so. And obviously, on the bigger pieces, we can pour it straight in from the cup like so. And you'll find it starts spreading around slowly. But remember, just help it on its way with your toothpick or whatever you prefer to use like so. Right, I'm just going to pop a little bit more in that off camera, and then basically we can just start filling this one in. Right, there's the last of the resin gone in. And as we've been filling them up, we literally skim over the top with our lighter. And you won't really see it through the camera, but all those little bubbles, and they're all just like little pinheads, disappear. That's it, that's all we can do. If I can pick this up without dropping it, you can see from that, it's all nicely filled up. And we had a little bit of red left over, and a little bit of white, and I tend to put them into little separate moulds, and then we'll use those on another project for sure. Okay, cover it all over, find a board, a tray or some description. Any flies, dust, they will find it. Now we'll leave this for a good 24 hours and then we'll take it back down into the shed and see what we've got. Right, it's about 24 hours later. Personally, I will leave this for another couple of days. Some resin manufacturers recommend at least 30 days to fully cure. I think that's a little bit over the top, but I am not a resin manufacturer. For me personally, 24 hours, couple of days, everything's nice and solid. And I'm quite happy to hang that up on the wall, no problem. And like I say, we've had no issues. If you look really close, you might see the odd little speckle there. And I'll say speckle, that's a word we can use. Just there, that is more or less a bubble that's come up and I haven't gone back. Or it could be a bit of plywood, we haven't cleared it out enough and bits got underneath and it's raised itself to the surface. That's nothing to be concerned about. Once that's up on the wall, I think it's going to be a nice project for somebody. And you can see that lovely shine from that resin and everything's gone fine. Now, that would be it for this project. This project is finished. We'll put a hook on the back and we are done. But while the resin was curing, I had a bit of time on my hand. So I literally drew around the template again and made these extras for the eyes, which we're going to put on in a minute just to show you. And I actually prefer with these on. It just gives it a thicker rim and just makes those eyes pop out a little bit. And I also made some kind of webbing to come out the actual hand itself, coming out of here. Now, the eye sections, I'm quite happy with those, and I'm going to glue them off camera. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the rest of the project. And you can see from that, it just alters it slightly. Better still when I give you a close-up. And that just makes those eyes just jump out a little bit more. You can see from that. And this was our webbing. Maybe it wanted a bit wider at the bottom. And I did try and have it coming out of there. So it's shooting out of his hand. Or that way around there. But it just wasn't working out. It's just not having it. So we're going to leave that off completely. You try things. These are little add-ons on bits of scrap wood. But I definitely like the eyepieces. Like I say, if I just remove that now, you can just have a slight difference. It just gets a thicker framework around the eyes. So I'll glue these on with just simple super glue. And then when we come back, we'll do our little talk off to finish the project. Right, that's it. This little project is finished. So I glued the 2 extra frames on the eyes here, a bit of super glue, and it's just enough so they are slightly raised by 3.6 millimeter plywood, and to me it just makes it a little bit different and just gives a better framework for those eyes there. And while I was inside, we actually popped a little hook on the back there for hanging purposes, and that hangs nice and central the way it should. So that's it. This little project is finished. So it's Spider-Man routed out and cut out on 12mm plywood for the routing side of things. As always, me little CNC bits to do all our lines with, and the end milling bits just for the clear out. They work fantastic, no problem with them. Just remember your little adapter collet so they fit your router. I will put links into the description for all the little bits I use. And then we came in with the cutting side of things, and for me personally, the Pegasus number 5 spiral blade. If you are going to purchase a scroll saw, try and get the one that takes pinless blades. Mine only takes pinned, so I have to use those adapters, and they can be a little bit awkward sometimes, put them on and off all the time. And then we gave it a general clean up with the Dremel mouse sander, bit of sandpaper, and I think we already had a sanding drum on the Dremel just to round all these edges off. So we've lost all our sharpness. You could have spent a bit more longer sanding it all down, but for me personally, for a free gift for somebody, I'll be more than happy to receive that one myself. And then we painted the white and black with good old painter's touch paints. They're my favourites at the moment. And for the inlay with the resin, Vista One resin, and we mixed it with acrylic paints, just the red and white, and I use Crawford and black for me. They're fantastic little paints. and we inlaid the rest, all that with that, and that was it. Remember, we put the paint on and we just spray a bit of varnish on. I just noticed there at the corner of my eye, just 151. Didn't really need it, but I do like to have a extra little shine on my projects here, as you can see. Remember, with these resin ones, these are indoor projects, so I wouldn't really put these outside with UV lighting and stuff. I think those colours, and obviously with it being plywood, it's not advisable. Those colours will soon fade in time. So indoor only with all my resin projects. And that's it. And it also measures in by 21 inch by 22 inch. And that's it. Spider-Man with the web, routed and cut out on 12mm plywood and inlaid with a resin mixed with acrylic paints. Thank you very much for watching.